Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing really well. So in today's episode, I'm really excited about this one because I am jumping on the bandwagon and doing one of those tier ranking lists. I know they seem to be quite popular at the moment. They're definitely ones that I enjoy to watch if it's a topic that I'm interested in. I am a prolific list maker and ranker, so this is right up my street. I thought it would be really fun to do one of my own. If you guys enjoy it, let me know. I am more than happy to do more of these in the future. And if you do enjoy it and you have some suggestions or ideas of ones you would like me to do, again, let me know down in the comments and I will keep a note of that. So we are kicking off with horror subgenres. I have 24 of them to rank, but I will say I have probably forgotten some or missed some. There are an enormous amount of subgenres in horror, but I think having 24, it's a fair amount to get going with. Also, I didn't just want to rank the subgenres, I wanted to think of a few movies for you guys as recommendations. Even for the subgenres that I don't watch the movies in, I still searched a few movies as recommendations for you. So that's enough chatting, let's get into it. The first subgenre is Alien. Now, for me, I would say Alien is a good time. I think it's not oversaturating the market. I don't think they're the best of the best, but I do enjoy watching them and I think some of them can be genuinely scary. Now, I do just want to make a point of that I have separated Alien from sci-fi because I think Alien movies can be their own category. Some are space-based and some are earth-based. And with the sci-fi movies, I think sometimes there are science fiction horror that is based around something other than Alien. So I wanted to make that divide. So that's why Alien is a subgenre on its own. As far as recommendations, I would definitely say The Fourth Kind. That one really scared me and unnerved me when I watched it. I would also recommend The Faculty, a brilliant teen 90s classic. Signs, really good. And also if you're looking for more of a daft fun time, I would recommend Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Okay, next subgenre is Aquatic. This for me, high end, without a doubt. If you've been on my channel for a while, you will have probably heard the phrase, I love any horror movie set in, on or around water. I just love being near the water, and so watching movies where it has that setting is very pleasing for me. I think with Aquatic though, it often does verge into and cross paths with creature feature. So you have a lot of shark movies and, fish or crocodile movies. So I have tried to think of Aquatic as a little bit separate from creature feature. With Aquatic, it's the variety as well. You have some with underwater bases and you have some that are boat based, you have some that are creature based. So the variety is so much fun and the setting is so pleasing for me. As far as recommendations would go, obviously Jaws. It's one of my favourite movies of all time and is a really important movie in cinema history. I would also recommend Deep Blue Sea because even though it kind of got slated when it first came out, I think with hindsight now people are realising how good that film is because it's not easy to recapture the success of Jaws with a shark movie. There are a lot of shark movies, they're 10 a penny, and I think Deep Blue Sea did something pretty special. I would also recommend Creature from the Black Lagoon. An absolute classic movie. It's one of the Universal monsters. And I would also recommend Triangle. That's more boat based and can slip into psychological horror as well. And I would also recommend Underwater, which I watched earlier this year and I thought was actually really good. Okay, next subgenre we have Body. Now, I'm not sure about Body. I think some of them can be good films. It's just not personally one I enjoy. But it's not a no. I'm going to put Body in more please because I don't think that we have a large amount of body horror. And I know that for some people it can be very enjoyable, so we'll put it in more please. As far as recommendations go, I would recommend David Cronenberg's The Fly. David Cronenberg is probably the granddaddy of body horror. The Thing as well. Although it could be an alien or a sci-fi movie, I think when people think of The Thing, it's mostly those incredible practical effects which give the movie its body horror. And even though it's a movie I haven't seen, I would also say there is the recent movie Tusk, which, if you've seen it, you know. Okay, next up we have Cannibal. Now, Cannibal, I'm primarily thinking of the movies like Green Inferno and Cannibal Holocaust. But I suppose you could also have things like Wrong Turn, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Fresh, which came out earlier this year. Now, for me, because as I said, primarily, I'm thinking of the tribal cannibal movies, then it's a no for me. A definite no. I have not seen and will not see Green Inferno or Cannibal Holocaust. That's just a personal preference, personal choice. If you like those movies, you know, that's fine. You do you. For me, they're just not one that I want to watch. However, I absolutely love the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and I loved Fresh. It's still one of my favourite movies of this year so far. So those three could be okay, but no, generally it's a no. Okay, next subgenre is comedy. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of comedy horror generally, but I think when it's done well, it can be really fun. It can be a good time. I don't think it's overdone, and it's not a no, and I don't personally want more of them. So I think we're going to have to put comedy in a good time. As far as recommendations go, I would say Cabin in the Woods, Tucker and Dale vs. Evil, Ready or Not, and of course Shaun of the Dead, which is probably the best horror comedy made. It's possibly a near perfect film. It is fantastic. Okay, next subgenre is creature feature. This one for me is high end. Now hold on before you click off, because I know not everybody loves creature feature, but creature features for me, there is a lot of variety, and I think it's because they dip into the aquatic horror because of the shark movies and things like that. So I think that's where my love for it comes from. I will say though that there is a moral question behind creature features that I'm very aware of, especially with shark movies. There is a very negative portrayal of creatures and can misinform people. So I think that if you are going to watch and enjoy creature features, it's also a good idea to educate yourself properly on the animals and the creatures that are involved in these movies. Shark Week is really good to educate you properly on sharks. They're such beautiful creatures. But yeah, I have a fun time with them. They are movies that I gravitate towards more than some of the other subgenres. As far as recommendations would go, I would say The Mist, an absolutely incredible creature feature and important to this channel because it is the movie that launched it. There is also Tremors, a really good fun movie. I would also say things though like The Blob, Basket Case, A Quiet Place. And also for creature features, The Birds by Alfred Hitchcock. That is an incredible movie. Okay, next subgenre is crime. Now, crime horror is a funny one because it walks a really fine line between horror and thriller, or a dark thriller. But there are some of them that definitely have horrific moments in them, horror elements to them. So for me, crime is a good time. I enjoy these movies. I don't think they're overdone. We could probably have more of them. But yeah, I think for me, they deserve to go that one higher space. Now, my recommendations would be Seven, and would be American Psycho, and also Silence of the Lambs. Silence of the Lambs, an incredible movie. Seven is the one that could be argued is more in the dark thriller side, but I think it has aspects of Saw to it. With the deadly sins and the traps, I think there's a similarity there. So definitely horror elements and a good time for me. Okay, next up, we have cult and pagan. Now, up until recently, I hadn't seen many cult and pagan horror movies. And I've been catching up on horror movies. Some of them have been cult and pagan, and I've really enjoyed these. So I think for me, it's going to go in high end because, I don't know, I don't think I've seen a bad one yet. Yeah, I'm going to put it in high end. I'm going to risk it. I'm going to put it in high end. My recommendations would obviously be Midsommar. This is a beautiful cult movie, heavy going, so I would say look into trigger warnings before you watch it if you haven't already. I would also recommend The Wicker Man, the original, not the Nicolas Cage remake, the original. And I would also highly, highly recommend The Ritual. This is one that I've watched the most recently, and I absolutely love that movie. So I'm recommending it to anybody and everybody because I want more people watching that movie. Okay, next subgenre is demonic. Now, I have separated, like with alien and sci-fi, I have separated demonic with possession because these movies again walk a very fine line. They are often interchangeable, but I'm trying to think of demonic movies where the focus isn't necessarily the possession, where the demon or the devil takes on a persona of its own. It's not just that it's hidden within a human host. So with that in mind, demonic movies I think are a good time. I enjoy a lot of these. My recommendations would be Sinister, Insidious, the Evil Dead franchise, and The Witch to a point, because you are dealing with making deals with the devil. So maybe not demonic, but definitely devilish. So yeah, a good time. Next up we have Exploitation. Now this one, it's a no. I'm thinking of particular exploitation ones because I've also already mentioned that there are cannibal exploitation ones, but for me it's the sexploitation. Those are movies that are not for me. I wouldn't personally seek them out for fun and for entertainment, but I know some people really do enjoy them. So recommendations for those would be Last House on the Left or I Spit on Your Grave. Okay, next subgenre is found footage. Now, this is another love it or hate it like creature feature, but for me, it's a good time. Yeah, it's a good time. It is, because I think found footage like creature feature, when it's done well, it's done really well. But the problem is, not all found footage is good. And I think that because you can do it with a lower budget because of the technology that you're using, maybe I should have put it in overdone. No, I'm going to stick with good time, because I do stand by that even though they can be 10 a penny, and I think because of the low budget people can churn them out, when they're done well, they are done really, really well. So my recommendations for found footage would be ones like Unfriended, Host, The Blair Witch Project, obviously, the Paranormal Activity franchise. I know it's not for everybody. I personally really love those movies. I think that they have more to them and more commentary to them than people give them credit for. I would also recommend Spree as well. That's another really good one. It's funny, because with found footage, I do like some of them. As I say, I love the Paranormal Activity ones, but there are some that I can't watch because I get motion sick. I mentioned this in my last episode where I reviewed Dashcam, and that one ended up making me feel ill because it is the shaky cam. If you have more of a steady cam, like in the found footage movies, then it's better for me that way. Okay, so next subgenre is ghosts and spirits. This one for me is high end. This is the horror that really gets me. It's ghosts and hauntings and the supernatural. These are the movies that I have the most fun with because they actually scare me. So yeah, this is definitely a high end for me. Yes, we have quite a few of them, but I think as well with ghost and spirit movies, you can have quite a variety with them. So while we have quite a few, I don't know, I think there's the potential there and the possibility to keep it fresh, even though we have a lot. And as I say, it's what personally scares me, and I don't get scared very often these days with horror, so when I do appreciate it. Okay, so for recommendations, as you can imagine, I have quite a few to recommend. The first one would be Ring You. I think that is a definite, because it's one of my favourite horror movies. 1408, based on the Stephen King short story. That's another really good ghost one. Most recently, Last Night in Soho. That is an incredible ghost story. I would definitely recommend that one. I would also recommend A Tale of Two Sisters. That's a Korean horror movie. And of course, Ghostbusters. It is a perfect ghost movie. It's a gateway horror movie. It's a family horror movie. And it just rocks. So that's why it's a recommendation. Okay, next up we have Gothic. Oh, again, no. Can it go in high end? I like Gothic horror. You know what? Actually, Gothic horror is going to go in more, please. Yeah, because I really do enjoy Gothic horror because of the aesthetic. Very few horror movies are perfect to watch in the autumnal months than Gothic horror because of the atmosphere and the aesthetic of it, with the older crumbling houses and, just the mist and the smoke through trees and woods. definitely a fan of Gothic horror and we need more of that. And for recommendations of Gothic horror, I would suggest The Woman in Black, Crimson Peak and Sleepy Hollow. Okay, next we have Haunted House. Now, Haunted House again is one of those that could cross into ghosts or demonic because there are movies that are haunted by both ghosts and demons, but I'm thinking of more the classic haunted house. So think The Haunting, you know, old crumbly house, lights flickering, creaky doors. And I think for really good haunted house movies, I don't think there are enough. So I'm going to put it in more, please, because as I say, there are demonic and ghost haunted house stories, but that's more the focus, the ghost and the demon. Whereas I want just a spooky haunted house. So we want more of those, please. For recommendations of haunted house movies, I would recommend The Shining, The Others, The Haunting and The Changeling. Okay, so next subgenre is Hillbilly. Now, this is kind of a term that has come mostly from Rob Zombie movies, but I think it's definitely applicable to other movies in the horror genre. So I'm thinking of usually a small family that lives out in the middle of nowhere with murderous or cannibalistic tendencies. Sometimes there is interbreeding hinted at or alluded to in them. So I don't really enjoy these movies because these are ones that often cross over into the cannibal and the exploitation. So it's gonna be a no for me for Hillbilly. However, I do enjoy the Firefly trilogy, or more importantly, the middle one and the last one, so Devil's Reject and Three from Hell. So they would be a recommendation, but there's also the Wrong Turn franchise and The Hills Have Eyes. Okay, so next subgenre is home invasion. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of home invasion movies. Again, like all the subgenres, when it's done well, it can be done really well. But it's very, very, very rarely done well. So I think I'm gonna put it in overdone. I know it's not exactly saturating the market, but I think that we have more than enough home invasion movies, and I don't think I want any more, or we need any more. But for recommendations, there are The Strangers, You're Next, and Hush. Okay, so next subgenre is monster. Now, what I mean by monster is generally the universal monsters, so things like werewolves and vampires, Frankenstein, things like that. Now for me, they're a good time. I have a good time with monster movies because I think it has that classic element to it. It reminds me of, you know, the older movies, and I do love the universal monsters, especially Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein and Creature from the Black Lagoon. So yeah, I think monster is a good time. So for recommendations for monster movies, I would recommend Frankenstein, Dracula, and a more modern one would be The Descent. That is an incredible horror movie and an incredible monster movie. Okay, next subgenre is possession. This one is overdone as far as I'm concerned. This is the one that ties very closely with demonic, but I think the possession side of it, that's the bit that's overdone. That's the bit that they don't get creative with anymore. When The Exorcist came out, it was groundbreaking and it terrified people, but now we have so many possession movies, especially with the Conjuring franchise coming out. That's really heightened how many we have got. I'm not saying they're bad. I do love the Conjuring franchise, well, the actual Conjuring movies. And I do love The Exorcist as well. Well, the first one and the third one. The second one is rubbish. I just think we have too many of them. I think it has been overdone. It's not creative anymore, and there's just no need for more of them at the moment. Maybe in the future, someone can come back with a really fresh take on it, but as of at the moment, stop. But for recommendations for possession movies would be Jennifer's Body, The Conjuring, and The Exorcist. Okay, next subgenre is psychological, and this one is going in high end. I love psychological horror. This is another one that can dabble into the dark thriller, but it can also dabble into any of them. This can combine with any of the other subgenres. I mean, if you think about it, Midsommar is a cult movie, but it's also psychological. I'm trying to think of another one really quickly. So crime, Silence of the Lambs, also psychological. So this is a subgenre where people can get really creative and really unique as well. So recommendations for psychological horror would be The Night House, Gerald's Game, and Invisible Man. The Lee Winnell remake or reimagining, that one is an incredible movie. Definitely check that one out. Okay, next subgenre is sci-fi. So, like I said at the beginning, I crowbarred this apart from Alien, as in Alien subgenre, because I think there are so many incredible science fiction horror movies that are not alien based. I'm not going to put it in overdone, because even though we have a lot of science fiction, this is one of the subgenres, one of the main ones that gives us the most variety. So I don't think that it's copy, paste, repeat. This one I'm going to put in a good time. I do really like sci-fi. Yeah, I think I'm going to put it in there because we get the variety. It is a good time. It is good fun. Some of them can be a little bit missed though. And for recommendations of this subgenre, I actually have to read my list because I have so many. Two of them I have already mentioned before, which is Lee Winnell's Invisible Man and his Upgrade. These are both incredible science fiction because they're delving into the science fiction of the technology side of it. Also the Alien franchise, I've put that in here rather than in the Alien subgenre just because. Also Annihilation, Circle, and The Platform. Okay, next subgenre is slasher. Now, I love slasher movies. I think that they are the most easy and comfortable watch in horror movies. But, I'm gonna put it in overdone. Just because we are inundated with slasher movies, and it's very rare we get one that does something different and exciting. Now, some of my favourite horror movies of all time are slasher movies. They are the ones that I gravitate towards the most and rewatch the most because, as I said, they have that comfortable element to them. But majority of the time, 9 times out of 10, when it gets to the final girl circuit, when it gets to that third act, I'm checked out. I'm not interested anymore. I'm bored. I don't want to just see people running around for about 20 minutes. So yeah, it's going in overdone because the market is just saturated with slasher movies. But for recommendations of slasher movies, I have some absolute doozies for you because, like I said, some of these are my favourite horror movies of all time. So there is the Scream franchise, there's the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, such an incredible movie. Most recently, X. This is a really good example of it being done differently. This is a really good example of it keeping me engaged and entertained throughout. I wasn't bored in any of the acts. But I would also recommend Sleepaway Camp, the original one, because I've recently watched this, recently discovered it, absolutely loved it. So I would recommend to go and check that out. But bear in mind, it is very much a product of its time. Okay, 3 subgenres to go. Next up, we have splatter. Now, what I mean by that is the kind of torture porn movies, things like that, where you are there primarily for the gruesome and graphic and inventive kills. Now, I think splatter is potentially overdone. Yeah, I'm going to put it in overdone. Only because I think it was really saturating the market for a while there. We don't have as many. Yeah, I'm going to put it in overdone. I'm going to stick to my guns. I'm going to do that. The funny thing is with the splatter genre or subgenre is that it's a 50-50 for me. I either really enjoy it or I really don't. And I think that my recommendations reflect this. I wanted to recommend a few different ones that are in this subgenre, but only half of them I really like and half I don't. So for the splatter recommendations, I would recommend the Saw franchise and the Final Destination franchise. These are 2 of my favourite horror franchises. I think that they are inventive in the kill side, a little bit weak on the story side, but still a really good time. And then there are also movies like the Hostel franchise, the Wrong Turn franchise, and also the Collector first two. It's not a franchise, but the first one and its sequel. Okay, next subgenre is tech, and for me this is going up in high end. I did recently do a top 10 tech horror movies, which I will link somewhere here, so if you haven't seen it, go and check that out. I only recently realised while researching for that episode that I love tech horror. I really do enjoy them because it has that science fiction element to it, but also that fear that can come from an everyday object, something that we have a use for and a reliance on and can just be sat there in our lives and actually be a potential threat. I also think that we get some of the best foreign movies through tech horror as well. And one of them is one of my favourite movies. Well, not favourite movies, but one of my favourite horror movies of all time. So recommendations for that would be Ring You, Pulse, One Missed Call, They Live, Upgrade, Unfriended, Host, so many. Honestly, if you want the recommendations, just go watch the top 10 tech movie episode that I did. And finally, we made it, guys. The final subgenre is zombie. Now, I'm going to put zombie in overdone because I think that the zombie subgenre is overdone. It is saturating the market, and I know that not everybody loves zombie movies, and I honestly think it comes down to the fact that the market is saturated with them. That's when people get bored. That's when people have had enough, and I think it's such a shame because I do personally really love zombie movies, and I think that they are one of the subgenres that are perfect to include commentary on society, on human fears, on so many things. And there have been some incredibly clever and well written zombie movies, and because the market is just full of them, because there are just 10 a penny, it kind of lumps them all in the same category, and it loses that specialness that it has. I know that's not the best word, but I mean, shows like The Walking Dead, that's not a movie, I know, but it is was originally an incredibly well done show where the zombies were only really there as a way to tell the story that it wanted to tell. But because of its popularity, that really created a boom of zombie media and zombie content. So yeah, I think zombie is probably, looking at the overdone, zombie is the biggest offender, and then slasher and possession. And I think it's such a shame because there are some really good zombie movies. My recommendations would be Shaun of the Dead. I think that is incredible. 28 Days Later is really good and has a strong sequel as well in 28 Weeks Later. I would also recommend Night of the Living Dead. I think that is brilliant. Dawn of the Dead, either one is pretty good. The remake's a pretty strong remake. Reanimator is a really good one. I mean, Frankenstein is a zombie movie technically. You also have Train to Busan, which is a really good foreign zombie movie. So there are some really strong contenders out there, and I would say don't write it off completely. So there we go. That is my tier list ranking. Not many in the more, please, but yeah, A Good Time seems to have the most in it, and these are my high-end ones. Anyway, there you have it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this tier ranking list. I'm sorry if I was speaking incoherently and didn't make any sense whatsoever. First time doing one of these videos, but it was really good fun. I would love to do more of them for you guys. So like I said at the beginning, if you enjoyed this, give it a thumbs up. Let me know down in the comments so I know whether or not to do more in the future. Your feedback is really appreciated. But in the meantime, thank you as always for stopping by. I really do appreciate it. Take care of yourselves, and I will talk to you in the next episode. Bye, guys.